The envelope was empty. I stared at it, my hands trembling so violently that the paper crinkled between my fingers. Empty. Completely, utterly empty. The envelope that was supposed to contain my college tuition, 4 years of savings, scholarships, and part-time jobs, held nothing but air and broken promises. Amelia, sweetheart, you need to understand. My mother's voice cut through the roaring in my ears, but I couldn't look at her. If I looked at her, I might shatter completely. My chest burned, like someone had reached inside and set fire to everything I'd built, every dream I'd carefully constructed, brick by brick. Where is it? My voice didn't sound like mine. It was too cold, too hollow. Where is my money? Silence. The kind of silence that screams the truth before anyone opens their mouth. We needed it for Victoria's wedding. My father's voice came from behind me, matter of fact, as if he'd just explained why he'd borrowed my umbrella. Your sister's marriage to the Chen family is important for our future. You'll understand when you're older. I was 22 years old. I'd worked 3 jobs since I was 16. I'd saved every penny, declined every invitation, skipped every party. While Victoria posted photos from designer boutiques and fancy restaurants, I'd been serving coffee at 5 a.m. before my classes started. While she complained about which luxury car Daddy should buy her, I'd been tutoring spoiled rich kids who treated me like furniture. And now, 3 days before my university payment deadline, they'd given it all to her. For a wedding dress that cost more than my entire education. Amelia, don't be selfish. Victoria's voice drifted from the living room, honey-sweet and poisonous. Marriage is more important than some college degree. Besides, you can always work and save up again. I only get married once. Something inside me snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, just a clean, quiet break like a thread pulled too tight. I turned to face them all, my mother, wringing her hands with that practiced look of maternal concern. My father, already returning to his newspaper, the matter settled in his mind, and Victoria, draped across the sofa in her silk robe, examining her fresh manicure with the satisfaction of a cat who'd stolen the cream. You're right, I said softly. My mother's face brightened with relief. Oh, I knew you'd understand, sweetheart. You're such a good... You do only get married once. I placed the empty envelope on the table with exaggerated care, which is why I'm making this easy for you. You'll never have to choose between your daughters again. My father lowered his newspaper. What are you talking about? I'm leaving. The words landed like stones in still water. Victoria laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Don't be dramatic. Where would you even go? You have nothing. No money, no connections, no... I have myself. I picked up my phone and the small bag I'd already packed that morning. I'd known, somehow, that this conversation would end exactly this way. That's more than I had 5 minutes ago when I still believed family meant something. My mother's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. Amelia, you can't just leave. What will people say? What will the Chens think? There it was, the truth beneath the performance. They didn't care that I was leaving. They cared what the neighbours would whisper at Victoria's wedding. I pulled my wrist free and the look in my eyes must have shown something cold and final, because my mother stepped back. Tell them whatever you want, I said. Tell them I'm ungrateful. Tell them I'm selfish. Tell them I'm a terrible daughter who abandoned her family. I walked to the door, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack through my ribs. But 5 years from now, when Victoria's marriage falls apart because the Chen boy is already cheating on her, yes, Mother, I saw him last week with that secretary. And when you need someone to take care of you in your old age, remember this moment. Victoria's face had gone white. You're lying. Michael would never... Check his phone. I opened the front door, and the morning air hit my face like a baptism. Or don't. Either way, I won't be here to watch the fallout. If you walk out that door, you are no longer our daughter, my father's voice boomed through the house. I paused at the threshold, turned back one last time. Good, I whispered. That makes this easier. The door closed behind me with a soft click, the sound of my old life ending. The rain started 20 minutes after I left. Not a gentle drizzle, but a torrential downpour that soaked through my jacket in seconds and turned my hair into rivers running down my face. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. I stood under the awning of a closed bookstore, watching the water cascade off the edging sheets. My phone buzzed incessantly in my pocket. Mother, father, even Victoria, suddenly desperate to talk things through. I turned it off. Some conversations weren't worth having. The street was empty except for expensive cars rushing past, their headlights cutting through the grey morning like searchlights. This neighbourhood, the one I'd grown up in, where my parents had pretended to be wealthier than they were, suddenly felt foreign. I'd never belonged here. I'd just been too young to realise it. You'll catch pneumonia standing there. The voice came from my left, deep and precise, with an accent that spoke of expensive education and boardrooms. I turned to find a man standing beside me, holding a black umbrella that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He was tall, well-dressed in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been designed for his frame alone. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that assessed me with the cool calculation of someone who missed nothing. Late 20s, maybe 30. The kind of handsome that belonged on magazine covers and made ordinary people feel inadequate. I'm fine, I said, though my teeth were starting to chatter. You're objectively not. He tilted his head slightly, studying me with open curiosity. You've been standing in the rain for 15 minutes. You're crying, though I suspect you haven't noticed. And you're gripping that bag like it contains your entire life. I touched my face. He was right. Tears mixed with rain, indistinguishable. Maybe it does, I said. Something flickered in his eyes. Interest, perhaps. Or recognition of a kindred soul who understood loss. I'm Alexander Crane, he said, as if the name should mean something. It didn't. I'd spent the last 6 years working, not reading society pages. Amelia, I offered, because rudeness seemed pointless when I was already drowning. Well, Amelia. He glanced at his expensive watch, then back at me. I have a breakfast meeting in 30 minutes with people I'd rather not see. Would you like to get coffee and help me procrastinate? I should have said no, should have been wary of strange men with umbrellas and perfect suits. But desperation makes you brave, or possibly just reckless. Why? Why what? Why would you want to have coffee with a soaking wet stranger who's clearly having the worst day of her life? Alexander's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Because 6 months ago I stood in the rain outside my family's estate after they informed me that my inheritance was conditional on marrying a woman I'd never met. I know that look in your eyes. The one that says the people who were supposed to love you just proved they never really did. The honesty gutted me. I nodded, not trusting my voice. We walked to a small cafe 3 blocks away, his umbrella sheltering us both. The warmth inside hit me like a wall, and suddenly I was shivering uncontrollably. Alexander ordered 2 coffees and guided me to a corner booth, then disappeared. He returned moments later with a blanket. Apparently he'd charmed it from a sympathetic waitress, and draped it over my shoulders. Talk or don't talk, he said, settling across from me, but you look like you need someone to sit with you while the world stops spinning. So I talked. I told him everything. The empty envelope, Victoria's wedding, my parents' betrayal, the 4 years of savings gone in an instant. The words poured out of me like poison I needed to expel, and Alexander listened without interruption, his dark eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. What do you want? He finally asked. What? Not what you need, not what's practical. What do you want? No one had ever asked me that before. I want them to regret it, I whispered. I want them to see me succeed without them. I want to walk back into that house one day and make them choke on their choices. Alexander's smile was sharp as a blade. Then I have a proposition for you. Marry me. I choked on my coffee. Alexander waited patiently while I coughed, his expression unchanged, as if he'd just suggested we order dessert rather than enter into matrimony with a complete stranger. I'm sorry, I managed when I could breathe again. Did you just propose? Yes. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Before you think I'm insane, let me explain the logistics. Please do, I said faintly. My family owns Crane Industries. Perhaps you've heard of it? I hadn't, but I nodded anyway, my mind still reeling. My grandfather built the company from nothing. My father expanded it into an empire. And now, according to the terms of my inheritance, I must marry before my 30th birthday, which is in 3 months, or control of the company passes to my cousin Marcus, who will undoubtedly run it into the ground within a year. He said this with the same calm one might use to describe the weather. And you want to marry me? A stranger you met in the rain? I want to marry someone who isn't part of my world, someone who won't use our marriage to climb social ladders or manipulate family politics, someone who needs what I can offer and can offer me what I need in return, which is a marriage of convenience, 1 year, publicly documented, enough to satisfy the inheritance terms. In exchange, I'll pay off any debts you have, fund your education at any university you choose, and provide you with a generous settlement at the end of our arrangement. You get your revenge and your future. I get my company. It was insane. Completely, utterly insane. Why me? I asked. You could have anyone. Someone from your world. Someone who would make it complicated, Alexander interrupted. Someone who would develop expectations, demands, emotional entanglements. You and I, Amelia, we're both pragmatists who've been burned by family. We understand that this is a transaction, not a fairy tale. That makes us perfect for each other. I studied him across the table, this stranger with his sharp suit and sharper proposition. There was something in his eyes, a hardness I recognised because I'd felt it forming in my own chest that morning. We were both people who'd learned that love was a luxury neither of us could afford. 1 year, I asked. 12 months from our wedding date. A clean divorce afterward, no strings attached. You will sign a prenup, naturally, but I'll ensure you're well provided for. And what would I have to do? As your wife? Attend social functions, smile for photographs, convince my family and board of directors that we're a legitimate couple. Nothing more intimate than public appearances would be required. My mind raced, calculating, weighing options I didn't have against possibilities I'd never imagined. I want to finish my degree, I said slowly, and I want my name on my diploma, not yours. I want to accomplish that as myself. Agreed. I'll set up a separate scholarship under an anonymous donor. No one needs to know the connection. And I want to be there for my sister's wedding. Alexander raised an eyebrow. The sister who just helped destroy your future. I don't want to be there for her, I said coldly. I want to be there for me. I want to walk into that wedding on your arm and watch their faces when they realise I didn't just survive, I thrived. Understanding dawned in his eyes, and with it, respect. You're more vindictive than you look, he observed. I appreciate that. Do we have a deal? He extended his hand across the table, and I noticed his hands were like the rest of him, perfectly groomed, but with calluses that suggested he actually worked, actually built things himself. We have a deal, Amelia. Welcome to the most honest marriage you'll ever have. I shook his hand, and the warmth of his grip felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. "When is Victoria's wedding?" he asked. 2 months. Alexander's smile turned predatory. "Then we have a lot of work to do. Crane weddings don't happen quietly." The weeks that followed felt like living in a dream, or possibly a very elaborate revenge fantasy. Alexander's world was nothing like mine. His penthouse apartment overlooked the city like a kingdom spread at his feet, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist luxury. The first night, he'd shown me to my room, a suite larger than my parents' entire house, and informed me I had an appointment with a stylist in the morning. "You don't need to change who you are," he'd said, reading my hesitation correctly. "But if we're going to convince people we're in love, you need to look like you belong in my world. Think of it as armor, not costume." He was right, I realized. In his world, appearance was currency. The stylist, a terrifyingly efficient woman named Claire, had taken one look at me and declared me a diamond in the rough. 3 hours later, I barely recognized myself. My hair properly cut and styled, clothes that fit my frame instead of hiding it, subtle makeup that enhanced rather than masked. "You were beautiful before," Alexander had said when he saw me, his tone matter-of-fact. "Now, you look like you know it. There's a difference." We'd crafted our story carefully. We'd met at a charity gala 6 months ago, one Alexander had actually attended, giving our lie convenient witnesses. A whirlwind romance, kept private, because we both valued discretion. We were deeply in love, ready to build a life together. The lie tasted like ash, but I swallowed it down. Alexander's assistant, a sharp-eyed man named David, had handled the legal paperwork with discretion. The prenup was fair, almost generous. My lawyer, Alexander had insisted I have my own, had found no tricks, no hidden clauses. "He's serious about this being a clean transaction," the lawyer had told me, surprised. "Most people in his position would try to maintain more control." But Alexander wasn't most people. He understood that trust, even manufactured trust, required fairness. The day before our courthouse wedding, small, private, just signatures and witnesses, Alexander found me on the penthouse balcony, watching the sunset turn the city gold. "Second thoughts?" he asked. "Third and fourth," I admitted. "Is that normal?" "I'd be concerned if you weren't having doubts." He leaned against the railing beside me, close but not touching. "This is temporary, Amelia. A year from now, you'll walk away with your degree, your independence, and the satisfaction of knowing you beat them at their own game. And you'll have your company." "Exactly. We both get what we need." But something in his voice made me glance at him, and I caught an expression on his face, something almost sad, almost lonely, before he smoothed it away. "Why did they make that rule?" I asked. "Your family, I mean. Why force you to marry?" "My grandfather believed that a man without family ties was a man with nothing to lose. Dangerous, in his opinion." Alexander's jaw tightened. He never considered that forcing family on someone could be just as dangerous. I understood suddenly that we were more alike than I'd realized. Both of us casualties of family expectations. Both of us learning to play by rules we'd never agreed to. "Thank you," I said softly. "For what?" "For not pretending this is something it's not. For being honest about what we both need." Alexander looked at me then, really looked at me, and something passed between us. Not attraction, exactly, but a recognition. The recognition of two wounded people forming an alliance. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "Tomorrow we tell my family. That's when things get complicated." The Crane family estate made my parents' pretentious house look like a garden shed. I stood in front of the iron gates, my hand tucked in the crook of Alexander's arm, and tried not to let my anxiety show. We'd been married for exactly 16 hours, a quick courthouse ceremony with David and Claire as witnesses, The gold band on my finger felt foreign, like wearing someone else's skin. "Remember," Alexander murmured as the gate swung open, "they're going to try to intimidate you. Don't give them the satisfaction. You're my wife now. That makes you untouchable." The words should have been comforting. Instead, they reminded me how precarious my position was. The house, no, mansion, was all old money and carefully cultivated prestige. A butler opened the door before we reached it. We were ushered into a sitting room that looked like a museum, where Alexander's family waited like a panel of judges. His mother, Eleanor Crane, sat in a wing chair like a queen on her throne. Tall, elegant, with Alexander's dark eyes and a spine that looked like it had never bent in her entire life. His father, Richard, stood by the fireplace, reading glasses perched on his nose, examining me with the interest one might show a potentially faulty investment. And then there was Marcus. Alexander's cousin lounged on a sofa, all calculated casualness and predatory smile. Handsome in a slick way, like a knife wrapped in velvet. "Well," Eleanor said, her voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel, "you've certainly surprised us, Alexander. We weren't aware you were even seeing anyone." "That was intentional," Alexander replied smoothly. "We valued our privacy." "Or you knew we'd object," Richard added. "That too." I almost smiled at Alexander's bluntness. Eleanor's gaze shifted to me, dissecting me layer by layer. "And you are?" "Amelia," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Amelia Carter." "Carter." Eleanor repeated the name as if tasting it. "I am not familiar with any Carters of note." "That's because we're not," I said simply. "My family is quite ordinary, Mrs. Crane. No old money, no social connections, nothing that would impress you." The honesty seemed to surprise her. "Then why would my son marry you?" The question was designed to cut, to make me feel small and inadequate. I felt Alexander tense beside me, preparing to intervene, but I squeezed his arm gently. This was my battle. "Because I'm honest about what I want, and I don't pretend our marriage is something it's not," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "Your son needed a wife to satisfy inheritance requirements. I needed stability and opportunity. We made a mutually beneficial arrangement. Would you have preferred he marry for love and risk it ending in a messy divorce that would embarrass your family?" Marcus laughed, a sharp bark of sound. "I like her. She's pragmatic." "She's unsuitable," Eleanor countered. "She's perfect," Alexander said coldly. "And she's my wife, which means this conversation is over. I came here as a courtesy mother, not to ask permission." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Richard finally spoke, his voice measured. "There will be a prenup, I assume?" "Already signed," Alexander confirmed. "And how long do you anticipate this arrangement lasting?" The question was a trap. I could feel it. "As long as it needs to," Alexander said. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have wedding announcements to send." We were halfway to the door when Eleanor's voice stopped us. "There's a charity gala next month, the one your father and I host annually. You'll be expected to attend, both of you." It wasn't a request. "We'll be there," Alexander said. In the car afterward, I released the breath I'd been holding. "That was terrifying," I admitted. "You handled it perfectly." Alexander's expression was carefully neutral, but I detected approval. "Most people crumble under my mother's scrutiny. You stood your ground." "Because I had nothing to lose. They already think I'm beneath them." "Then you have the advantage. They'll underestimate you." He glanced at me, something calculating in his eyes. "Which means they won't see you coming when you prove them wrong?" I smiled, and for the first time since this insane arrangement began, I felt something other than desperation. I felt powerful. The invitation arrived on expensive cardstock, embossed with gold lettering that screamed pretension. "Mr. and Mrs. James Carter, request the honour of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Victoria Marie Carter, to Mr. Michael Chen. I held it in my hands, this artifact from my old life, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "It came," I said, showing it to Alexander over breakfast. He glanced at it briefly, then returned to his newspaper. "Are you ready?" "No," I set the invitation down carefully. "But I'm going anyway." The weeks leading to Victoria's wedding passed in a blur of preparation and performance. Alexander had insisted on making our own wedding known, a carefully orchestrated announcement in all the right publications, complete with a photo of us at his family's charity gala. In the picture, I wore a midnight blue gown that had cost more than my childhood home's mortgage. Alexander's hand rested on my waist with possessive ease, both of us smiling with practiced perfection. We looked, I had to admit, like we belonged together. The society pages had exploded. Crane heir surprises everyone with secret marriage. Alexander Crane's mystery bride. Who is Amelia Carter? Fairy tale or business deal? Inside the Crane wedding. My phone had rung constantly. My mother, my father, Victoria, even old acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years, all suddenly desperate to reconnect. I'd blocked them all, except for one number. Victoria. She'd left 27 voicemails, each more frantic than the last. I listened to them all with clinical detachment. "Amelia, please call me back. We need to talk." "The Cranes? Seriously? How did you—" "Mother is having a breakdown. Father won't stop asking questions. Please, we're family. If this is some kind of revenge plot, it's not funny. Michael saw your wedding announcement. His family is asking questions about our connection. Amelia, I'm begging you, don't come to my wedding. Please." The last message made me smile. "Too late, Victoria. Too late." Alexander found me in his study 3 days before the wedding, reviewing documents for my scholarship application. He'd kept his promise. An anonymous donor had established a fund specifically for mature students pursuing degrees in business and economics. I'd been accepted immediately. "You're sure about this?" he asked, settling into the chair across from me. "About what? University or the wedding?" "Both." I set down my pen. "I'm sure about university. It's what I've always wanted. The wedding—" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "The wedding is necessary, not for revenge, well, not entirely. I need to see it. Need to close that door completely. And if your sister begs you not to come?" Then she should have thought of that before she helped steal my future. Alexander studied me with those dark, assessing eyes. "You're harder than you were 2 months ago." "Is that a bad thing?" "No." He smiled slightly. "Just an observation. You're learning." "Learning what?" "That mercy is a luxury of the powerful. We give it when we choose, not because anyone deserves it." The words should have chilled me. Instead, they felt like validation. The day of the wedding dawned clear and perfect, as if the universe itself was mocking Victoria's illusion of happiness. Alexander had arranged everything. A driver, a carefully chosen gift, expensive enough to shame, but not so extravagant as to seem try-hard, even my outfit. I wore cream and gold, colours that whispered bride, without actually being bridal. Elegant, understated, and utterly confidence-inspiring. My hair was done, simply, makeup minimal. I didn't need to try hard. That was the point. "Ready?" Alexander asked, adjusting his cufflinks with practiced ease. I looked at him, this man who'd become my ally, my armour, my weapon, and nodded. "Let's go break some hearts." The church was exactly what I'd expected. Over-decorated, overcrowded, and over-budget. White roses everywhere, like a funeral for common sense. The Chen family had clearly spared no expense, probably to compensate for the whispers that had started circulating about their Golden Boys' extracurricular activities. I saw the exact moment my mother spotted us. She'd been greeting guests near the entrance, playing the role of gracious mother of the bride, when her eyes landed on Alexander and me. Her face went through a fascinating journey: shock, confusion, recognition, calculation, and, finally, barely concealed horror. I smiled pleasantly and started toward her. "Amelia," she breathed, her hand fluttering to her throat. "You came?" "Of course, Mother. I wouldn't miss Victoria's special day." I gestured to Alexander beside me. "This is my husband, Alexander Crane. Darling, this is my mother, Patricia." Alexander extended his hand with perfect courtesy, and I watched my mother struggle with the decision to shake it. Refusing would be rude, accepting meant acknowledging our marriage. She shook it, her smile so forced it looked painful. "Husband?" she repeated faintly. "When did you—" "2 months ago. A small ceremony, just family." The lie slipped out smooth as silk. "We wanted to keep it private." My father appeared then, alerted by my mother's pale face. He took one look at Alexander, the expensive suit, the confident bearing, the face he'd probably seen in business magazines, and I watched him make rapid calculations. "Mr. Crane," he said, switching instantly to his networking voice, "this is an unexpected pleasure. I had no idea you were connected to our family." "Through Amelia," Alexander said smoothly, "though I understand the circumstances of her departure were complicated." The temperature dropped noticeably. "A misunderstanding," my father said quickly. "Family matters, you know how it is." "I know exactly how it is," Alexander replied, and something in his tone made my father step back. "Which is why I'm sure you'll understand that we won't be staying long. We have another engagement this evening." We didn't, but they didn't need to know that. Victoria appeared then, a vision in white lace and barely controlled panic. Her eyes widened when she saw me, then went nearly feral when she registered Alexander beside me. "Amelia?" My name came out strangled. "You actually came?" "Congratulations, Victoria." I handed her the gift box, a Tiffany's blue that made her jaw tighten. "Wishing you all the happiness you deserve." The emphasis on deserve wasn't lost on her. "Can I speak to you privately?" she hissed. "Of course, darling." I glanced at Alexander, who nodded and stepped aside with my parents, immediately engaging them in conversation that would prevent them from following. Victoria grabbed my arm and pulled me into a side room, her bride's facade cracking the moment the door closed. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "I was invited." "You know what I mean. Alexander Crane, the Alexander Crane. When did you—" She sputtered, actually speechless for once in her life. "When did I trap a billionaire?" I supplied helpfully. "Is that what you're asking? How did your pathetic little sister land someone so far above her station?" "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. I studied her, this woman who shared my blood, but none of my values. You meant exactly that, just like you meant it when you let mother and father steal my tuition, just like you meant it when you said I could just work and save up again." Victoria's face flushed. "That's not fair. I didn't know they were going to—" "You knew," I interrupted coldly. "You knew, and you let it happen, because you've never cared about anyone but yourself. So don't stand here in your expensive dress that I paid for and pretend you're the victim." "I'm getting married," she whispered, tears starting. "Can't you just be happy for me? Be my sister again?" For a moment, just a moment, I felt something like regret. This was still Victoria, still the girl who'd played dolls with me when we were small, before life taught us to compete instead of support. Then I remembered the empty envelope, the smug satisfaction on her face, the casual cruelty. "I am happy for you," I said, and meant it. "I'm happy you're marrying Michael. I hope you two have exactly the marriage you both deserve. Brief and disappointing. I hope that when he's caught with his secretary in 6 months, you remember this conversation. And I hope that when you realise mother and father will never choose you over their reputation, you remember that I was the only one who ever told you the truth. I opened the door, then paused. Oh, and Victoria? That secretary Michael's been seeing? She's pregnant. Congratulations on becoming a stepmother. I left her standing there, frozen in her white dress, looking like a ghost. The ceremony was a blur of false smiles and hollow vows. I sat beside Alexander in a pew 3 rows back, close enough to be noticed, far enough to maintain dignity, and watched Victoria marry a man who was already texting someone else during his own wedding. I'd seen it, the quick glance at his phone during the vows, the tiny smile he'd quickly suppressed. Alexander noticed too. He leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. You weren't lying about the secretary. I never lie about the important things, I whispered back. At the reception, I moved through the crowd like a queen in exile, gracious and untouchable. Relatives who'd ignored me for years suddenly wanted to reconnect. Family friends who'd never bothered to learn my name were suddenly fascinated by my story. How did you meet? What's it like being married to a crane? Your dress is stunning. Is it designer? I answered with practiced vagueness. Alexander a solid presence at my side, playing his role perfectly. Every time someone questioned our connection, he'd touch my waist, my hand, my shoulder, small gestures of possession that looked like affection. The performance was flawless. My mother cornered me near the dessert table, her smile brittle. I think we should talk. Clear the air. There's nothing to clear, I said pleasantly. You made your choice. I made mine. Don't be childish, Amelia. We did what we thought was best for the family. No, Mother. You did what was easiest for you. I took a sip of champagne. But that's fine, I understand now. You taught me exactly what I needed to learn. Which is, that family is a choice, not an obligation. And I choose differently than you do. Her face crumpled slightly, and for a moment I saw something like genuine regret. But then Victoria called for her, and the mask slipped back into place. We should go, Alexander murmured, appearing at my elbow. We've been seen, we've played our part, there's no reason to linger. He was right. Staying longer would look desperate, like I was trying too hard to prove something. We said our goodbyes, brief, polite, utterly empty of meaning. As we walked toward the exit, I felt Victoria's eyes on my back, burning with questions she'd never get to ask. In the car, Alexander loosened his tie and glanced at me with something like concern. How do you feel? Empty, I admitted. I thought revenge would feel more satisfying. It usually doesn't. He was quiet for a moment. Revenge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You got what you came for. You proved you didn't need them. Now, you have to decide what you're going to do with that freedom. I looked out the window at the passing city, at the life I was building without them. I'm going to succeed, I said quietly, not to spite them, not to prove anything, just because I can. Alexander smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. Good answer. The university library had become my sanctuary. I spent hours here, buried in textbooks and case studies, building the foundation of my future one assignment at a time. My professors knew me as Amelia Carter, scholarship student, always prepared, always engaged. None of them knew I went home each night to a penthouse apartment and a husband who was becoming something more complicated than a business arrangement. Alexander and I had settled into an unusual rhythm. We had dinner together most nights, discussing our days with the ease of old friends. He asked about my classes. I asked about his board meetings. We debated economics, politics, books, philosophy. He was brilliant and challenging and utterly different from anyone I'd ever known. And somewhere along the way, the lines had started to blur. I noticed the way his eyes lingered when I entered a room, the way his hand found the small of my back, even when no one was watching, the way he'd started saying, "Come home," instead of "Go back to the apartment." I noticed because I was doing the same things. My phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. Michael left. "You were right about everything. I hate you for that." I stared at the message, waiting for satisfaction that never came. Instead, I felt only tired. "I'm sorry," I typed back. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "No, you're not." She was right. I wasn't sorry he had left. I was sorry she'd had to learn the hard way that some people weren't worth the sacrifice. "Amelia?" I looked up to find Alexander standing by my study table, still in his suit from work, looking exhausted and somehow more human than usual. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "David mentioned you'd been here for 6 hours. I thought you might need dinner." He held up a takeout bag. "And maybe some company?" We ate in the quiet corner of the library's cafe, and I told him about Victoria's message. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I won, but the prize isn't what I expected." I picked at my food. I wanted her to hurt. Now that she does, I just feel empty. "That's called growing up," Alexander said quietly. "Realizing that vengeance doesn't heal wounds. It just creates different scars." "Is that why you married me? To avoid creating scars?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I married you because it was practical, safe, a transaction I could control." He met my eyes. "I didn't expect to enjoy your company, to look forward to coming home, to wonder what you're going to say next." My heart stuttered. "Alexander." 6 months left," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Our agreement ends in 6 months. I wanted you to know that if you want to leave early, I'll honour our contract fully. You don't have to stay just because of paperwork." "And if I don't want to leave?" The words hung between us, dangerous and true. "Then we need to talk," he said, "because this stopped being a business arrangement for me about 3 months ago, and I need to know if I'm the only one who's confused about what we're doing here." I reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers closed around mine instantly, like he'd been waiting for permission. "You're not," I whispered, "the only one confused. I mean..." His smile was slow, genuine, and devastating. "Then, we have 6 months to figure out if this is real or just proximity and convenience. And if it's real, then we renegotiate the contract," he said, "because I don't want a marriage with an expiration date anymore." Epilogue, 1 year later. The Crane family estate looked different in spring. I stood in the garden, where I'd first met Eleanor and Richard as Alexander's unsuitable wife, and marvelled at how much had changed. We were hosting the annual charity gala, together as genuine partners, with no pretense. Eleanor approached with 2 glasses of champagne, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. "You've surprised me, Amelia," she said, handing me a glass. "In a good way, I hope." "In the best way." She glanced toward the house where Alexander was laughing with his father. "He's different with you. Happy. I didn't think I'd see that." "Neither did I admitted. My phone buzzed. Victoria again. We'd been slowly rebuilding something. Not the relationship we'd had, but something more honest. "Congratulations on graduating top of your class." I saw the article. Mum won't stop talking about it. I smiled. "Thank you. How's the job search?" "Hard. Turns out Mrs. Degree doesn't impress employers. Want a reference? Alexander's company is hiring." A long pause. "You do that only if you earn it. No more free rides, Victoria. I wouldn't want one. Not anymore. Progress. Slow, painful, but real. Alexander appeared at my side, slipping an arm around my waist. "Ready to give your speech?" I looked at him. This man who'd started as a stranger with an umbrella and became my partner, my love, my choice. "Ready," I said. As we walked toward the podium together, I caught my reflection in the garden fountain. The girl who'd stood in the rain 6 months ago, broken and desperate, was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't making others hurt. It was refusing to let their betrayal define her future. It was choosing herself again and again, until choosing herself became as natural as breathing. It was building something real from the ashes of something false. And it was knowing, with absolute certainty, that she'd never need anyone's permission to be extraordinary again.